All right, let's dive into leadership today. We've got this podcast transcript, and it really breaks down different leadership styles.
Oh, yeah.
And get this, they use all these recognizable examples from history. So I'm thinking, by the end of this deep dive, we can figure out what makes a great leader.
Sounds good to me. You know, what I find fascinating is how they actually show these leadership principles in action.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, it's one thing to read a definition, right?
Absolutely.
But it's a whole other thing to see how, say, Nelson Mandela actually put those principles into practice.
Absolutely. Okay, so they start with a basic definition of leadership, someone who guides and inspires others.
Right.
But then, and this is where it gets interesting, they emphasize that leadership doesn't always have to come from a position of authority.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Have you ever noticed that? Like, someone, maybe not the official boss, but they just have that way of rallying people.
Oh, for sure. All the time.
That's what we're getting at here. It's more than just a title.
Exactly. And they list a bunch of qualities that make a good leader, like vision, empathy, integrity. But, two that really stood out to me, resilience and self-awareness.
Oh, those are good ones.
Yeah.
I'm curious, why do you think those are so crucial?
Resilience, think about it. Every leader is going to face setbacks.
Oh, yeah.
It's just inevitable. It's how you handle those setbacks, how you bounce back. That really shows your leadership.
It's that grit, that ability to keep going when things get tough.
Right. And then self-awareness. I think that's something we don't always associate with leadership, but it's huge.
Yeah, explain that one, because I can see how it's important, but...
Okay, so a leader who knows their own strengths, right? And also their weaknesses. They can use those strengths to their advantage, and they can find ways to compensate for the weaknesses, like building a diverse team.
It's like knowing yourself helps you lead others better.
Yeah. And also, it helps them understand how their decisions, how they act, how that impacts everybody else.
Right, so it's not just about you as the leader, it's about how you fit into the whole picture.
Exactly.
Okay, so the podcast goes on to break down a bunch of leadership styles. Autocratic, democratic, transformational. We could spend all day on that, but I think it's more interesting to jump right into the examples they use.
Yeah, let's do that.
See these styles in action. So first up, they talk about Nelson Mandela. He's a classic example, both of a transformational and a servant leader.
Definitely.
He led South Africa out of apartheid, but it wasn't just about politics, was it?
No, not at all. Mandela, he really had this deep vision for a unified South Africa.
Right.
And his ability to forgive those who had oppressed him and champion reconciliation, that's servant leadership right there.
That's incredible.
He chose healing and building a shared future instead of, going for revenge. That impact on South Africa's transition, it's huge.
Just think about that, bringing people together when there's so much division. It makes you think, how can we apply that in our own lives?
Absolutely. Even on a smaller scale, like fostering understanding, building consensus, that's leadership.
Okay, so next on the list, Steve Jobs. No surprise, they call him a visionary and innovative leader, and they link that directly to Apple's success. But it wasn't just about having ideas, right?
Definitely not.
It was about executing them, making those ideas a reality.
Jobs, he was super demanding, but he could really inspire his team to achieve things that seemed impossible. Like, look at the original iPod. Back then, MP3 players, they were clunky, not much storage. And then Jobs comes in, pushes his team to create something revolutionary. Sleek, intuitive, 1,000 songs in your pocket. That changed everything.
It was the whole user experience, like how it felt to hold the product. They weren't just making gadgets, they were creating a whole lifestyle.
Exactly. And it all came from Jobs' vision, his leadership. And speaking of leadership, remember how we talked about it not being tied to a specific job title? Well, Jobs was actually kicked out of Apple at one point.
Oh, that's right. He did come back, but wow, that's got to be rough.
It was a big blow. But here's the thing. Even when he wasn't at Apple, he was still showing those leadership qualities. He started NXT, this computer company. It wasn't a commercial success, but they pioneered all these technologies that Apple ended up using later on. His vision, his drive, it didn't just disappear because he wasn't the CEO.
So even when he was down, he was still a leader. It's almost like a part of who he was.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, another leader they talk about is Jacinda Ardern, New Zealand's prime minister. They describe her as empathetic and inclusive, especially when she had to deal with some really tough situations.
Oh, absolutely. Like her response to the Christchurch mosque shootings in 2019 Right away, she reached out to the Muslim community, offered comfort and support. That message of unity, of compassion, it really resonated with people everywhere.
And then her handling of the COVID pandemic. I mean, she acted so quickly and decisively.
The podcast really highlights her communication.
Oh, yeah.
So clear. And she was genuinely concerned for people. Those are real strengths.
Absolutely. She was giving regular updates, explaining the reasons behind the decisions she was making.
And addressing people's fears directly.
Yes. It built that sense of trust, when everything felt so chaotic.
Exactly. It was crucial at that time.
Okay, so we've seen a few leadership styles in action. It's amazing how different they can be, but effective in their own way. But I think we need to pause and ask ourselves, why does all this even matter?
Good point.
Why should we care about different leadership approaches?
Well, it's not just some abstract concept, right? Leadership, it impacts us directly, our lives, our work, our communities.
So they list all these reasons why leadership matters. I think for our listener today, let's focus on two: building team cohesion and driving innovation. What do you think?
Those are perfect. Let's start with team cohesion. Think about a time you were part of a really successful team. Chances are there was a strong leader who brought everyone together, someone who encouraged collaboration, valued everyone's contributions.
It's like that feeling when everyone's working toward the same goal, everyone feels heard.
Yeah, you're more than just individuals, you're a force.
And that's where great leadership comes in, right? Creating that kind of environment.
It's about building trust, being open, celebrating what you achieve together.
So what about driving innovation? Where does leadership fit into that?
Well, to innovate, you need creativity. You got to take risks. You have to challenge how things are usually done. And a good leader encourages all of that. They create a culture where it's safe to experiment, to share those new ideas. That's how you get innovation.
So it's about giving people the freedom to think outside the box.
Exactly. And not being afraid to fail.
Because sometimes you learn more from your mistakes than your successes.
Right. Leaders who get innovation, they understand that. They see mistakes as opportunities, not something to punish. They want their teams to push boundaries, to question everything, always looking for better ways to do things.
It's about having that growth mindset, but for the whole team, not just yourself. Okay, so we've talked about why leadership matters, different styles, how it all connects to things like team cohesion and innovation. I'm feeling inspired already.
Me too. And there's one more leader I think we should talk about, Imran Khan.
Oh, yeah, his background is so interesting.
It is.
Cricket star turned politician. You don't see that every day.
Not at all.
They describe him as this charismatic leader with reformist ideals.
He really is. Khan's leadership is defined by that charisma. And his vision for a Naya Pakistan, a new Pakistan. When he came into power, he made these big promises about tackling corruption, strengthening the economy, improving people's lives.
And the podcast, they highlight his ACES program, right?
Yeah.
Which aims to reduce poverty and provide those social safety nets.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of his leadership in action. ACES, it's this multifaceted program. Cash transfers, loans, scholarships. It's all about giving people the tools they need to lift themselves out of poverty.
So it's not just talk. It's about actually doing something, making a difference. I think we can all appreciate that, no matter what your political views are.
Absolutely. Yeah. Effective leadership is all about turning that vision into action, right?
It's about getting things done.
Finding solutions, making a positive impact on the world.
This has been such a great discussion. I mean, leadership is so multifaceted, and we've just scratched the surface.
I know, right? I feel like we could talk about this forever. But for now, how about we take a quick break, gather our thoughts, and come back to keep diving into the world of leadership.
Sounds good to me. We'll be back soon. All right, we're back, ready to keep going with this leadership thing.
Yeah, we've covered a lot. Mandela, Jobs, all these different approaches.
So what stands out to you the most so far? What should our listener really take away from all this leadership talk?
It's funny because there's no single answer, no magic formula. What worked for Mandela in South Africa might not fly in Silicon Valley, right?
Right. Different contexts, different approaches.
But there are some core principles, things that shine through no matter what.
Okay, I like that. So if you had to pick, say, the top 3 things someone should remember about effective leadership, what would they be?
First off, leadership is about action. It's not just about having a fancy title or barking orders. It's inspiring people, motivating them, guiding them towards something you all believe in. Like Jacinda Ardern, remember. Clear, empathetic communication during those crises. That's leadership in action.
You're not just talking the talk, you're walking the walk.
Exactly. And that brings me to another quality we talked about, resilience. Every leader, they're going to face challenges. It's going to happen. But it's how you respond to those setbacks. That's what sets you apart.
Like Churchill during World War II, right? Talk about tough challenges. But he had that determination. He rallied everyone.
He never gave up. That's the power of resilience.
And it's not just for world leaders, right? It's for us too. Leading a team at work, coaching a sports team, even just trying to reach a personal goal, you need that ability to bounce back.
Absolutely. And the second takeaway I'd highlight is adaptability. This world, it's constantly changing. You got to be able to change with it. Remember how Steve Jobs got ousted from Apple?
Yeah, but he didn't just disappear.
Exactly. Even outside of Apple, he was still a leader. He started NXT, kept pushing boundaries. True leadership, it's not tied to a specific job. It's more like a way of being.
Right. It's part of who you are. And it makes me think about another thing we touched on. Self-awareness.
Oh, that's so crucial.
Knowing your strengths and weaknesses. Building a team that fills in the gaps.
You don't have to be good at everything, but you have to know what you're good at, what you're not, and surround yourself with people who can do those things you can't.
It's like building a well-rounded team, each person bringing something unique to the table. Okay, so we've got action-oriented leadership, resilience, adaptability. What would you say is the third must-have?
Communication. That's number 3, and it's a big one. I'm not just talking about giving speeches, although think about people like Martin Luther King Jr., how they used words to inspire millions. It's about clear, consistent, authentic communication in every part of leadership.
From setting a vision for your team to actually listening to their concerns, it all comes back to communication. And to do that well, you need empathy, right?
You got it. If you don't understand the people you're leading, how can you inspire them? Look at Mandela again. His ability to forgive, to reconcile, that came from empathy. He saw beyond the anger and he built bridges.
Powerful stuff. Okay, so we've got our top 3. Action-oriented leadership, resilience and adaptability, and effective communication. These aren't just fancy words. They're things we can all work on no matter where we are in our leadership journey.
Absolutely. And that reminds me, leadership isn't just for CEOs and presidents. It's for everyone. Teachers, parents, community organizers, anyone who wants to make a difference.
So true. It's about recognizing those leadership qualities within ourselves and finding ways to use them. Okay, before we move on, let's go back to something we said earlier about there being no one right way to lead.
Right. It's not about fitting into some mold.
So how do you find a style that works for you?
It's got to align with your values, your strengths, and it has to fit the situation you're in. It's about being authentic to who you are, but also flexible enough to adapt when things change.
I love that. Being true to yourself while still being able to adjust to whatever comes your way. Okay, so we've covered a lot. Styles, qualities, how it all works in the real world. But there's one leader we haven't really talked about in depth, Imran Khan.
Oh yeah, his story is fascinating. From cricket star to prime minister, that's not your typical path.
Totally unique. And they emphasize this in the podcast, calling him charismatic, with this vision for a Naya Pakistan, a new Pakistan. What I find interesting is how they connect his charisma to his ability to connect with young people. Like he represents something different, a break from the old ways.
Definitely. He's seen as an outsider, not part of the traditional political scene. He came in promising change, and while it hasn't been easy, he's definitely made an impact.
And they specifically mention his ISAS program, this social welfare and poverty reduction initiative. It seems like he's trying to tackle those deep-rooted issues that have been around for decades.
It's a huge undertaking. ACES is this big program, cash transfers, microloans, scholarships, all sorts of things to help people get out of poverty. Bold and ambitious, that's for sure. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out long term.
It's a work in progress, but it shows he's trying to put his vision into action.
And that's what leadership is all about, right? Taking action, making a difference.
Identifying problems, finding solutions, making the world a better place.
And inspiring others to join you in that effort. Leadership, it's not a solo act. It's about teamwork, shared purpose, helping everyone reach their full potential.
This deep dive has been so eye-opening, so many different aspects to leadership. But before we wrap up, there's one more thing we need to talk about. Ethics.
Ah, yes, ethics. That's the foundation of good leadership. Without integrity, without a moral compass, all the charisma and vision in the world won't get you very far.
It's like building a house on sand. Looks good at first, but it won't last. So how do we make sure ethics are part of our leadership?
That's the big question. It starts with looking inward. What are your values? What do you believe in? What drives you? What do you stand for? What are your non-negotiables?
It's about doing what you say you'll do, being honest, treating people fairly, and holding yourself accountable, even when nobody's watching.
Exactly. Ethical leadership means doing the right thing, even when it's tough, even when people disagree. It's putting others before yourself and creating a culture where everyone feels safe to speak up if something's wrong.
Leading by example, showing those ethical principles in everything you do. That's a powerful message for everyone, not just those in charge.
Absolutely. Ethics are everyone's responsibility. We all have a part to play in making the world a better place. And ethical leadership, that's a powerful way to drive positive change.
This has been such a thought-provoking conversation. We've really dug deep into leadership, all the qualities, the different styles, the importance of ethics. But before we go, I want to leave our listener with a final question to think about.
Oh, I'm curious. What is it?
If you were to lead, what style would you choose? And why? Think about everything we've talked about, the examples, your own strengths and values. What kind of leader do you want to be?
That's a great question. It makes you really think about your own potential.
Exactly. Taking all this knowledge and applying it to our own lives, our own goals. So, to our listener, take some time with this question. What kind of leader do you want to be? What kind of impact do you want to make?
And remember, leadership, it's a journey, not a destination. It's about constantly learning, growing, becoming the best leader you can be.
You know, that question really got me thinking about my own leadership style.
It's a good one to consider. Makes you really look at yourself, you know?
Yeah, and out of all those leaders we've talked about, I think I'm drawn to the ones who are all about collaboration and making everyone feel included.
Oh, interesting.
Like if I was leading a team, I'd want to make sure everyone felt valued, that their voice mattered, that they could bring their ideas to the table.
That reminds me of something we talked about before, servant leadership.
Right.
Putting the needs of your team first, helping them grow, you know?
It's not about being the boss, it's more like being a guide, helping people reach their potential.
Exactly. And those kinds of leaders, they often create the most engaged teams, the most productive ones.
But you still need to, provide direction, set clear goals. Ultimately, you're the one making decisions.
Right. You need that balance.
Between giving people freedom and having that structure to get things done.
It's tricky. You need self-awareness. You need emotional intelligence. A good leader can read the room, understand the team dynamics, and adjust their approach.
So it's not just about picking one style and sticking to it no matter what. You have to be flexible, adapt to the situation.
Exactly. And that brings us back to something we've been talking about all along, how important it is to keep learning and growing.
Always evolving.
The best leaders, they're always looking for new knowledge, new skills, refining their approach.
It's not a destination, it's a journey. You got to stay humble, be curious, learn from your mistakes.
And learn from other people too. Surround yourself with different perspectives, different experiences. That's how you get a well-rounded view.
Especially now, right? The world is so complex.
You can't possibly know everything. You need a team that brings different kinds of wisdom to the table. That's how you find those innovative solutions.
And you need to make sure people feel safe to speak up, to share their ideas, even if they're a little out there. That's how you get real innovation.
I totally agree. You need that diversity of thought, that healthy debate.
This deep dive has been amazing. We've learned so much about leadership, what it means, the qualities, the ethical side of things.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. And what I love about this conversation is that it's not just about leadership in that traditional sense, like being a CEO or something. It's about recognizing those leadership qualities within ourselves.
Yes. We all have the potential to lead in our own way.
At work, mentoring someone, even just being a good friend or family member, it's all about empathy, communication, resilience, making ethical choices.
It's all connected. Leadership is everywhere.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listener with a final thought.
Okay.
Take all these insights, think about them, and figure out how you can apply them to your life.
Yeah.
What kind of leader do you want to be? What kind of mark do you want to leave on the world?
Those are the questions to ask yourself, your own personal leadership journey.
And remember, there will be challenges, but it's so rewarding. Embrace those challenges, stay curious, and never stop trying to be the best leader you can be.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep leading.